This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
Hello and welcome to All Indians Matter. I am Ashraf Engineer. As urbanization grows across India and so does the pressure on the metros, the government has calculated that technology will become the foundation for urban management. Accordingly, it launched the Smart Cities mission in 2015 as one of its flagship programs. The mission focused on area-based development consisting of redevelopment or city renewal, retrofitting or city improvement, and greenfield projects or city extensions. All of these would have a bedrock of technology solutions and would span a range of services from e-governance to waste management and water management to mobility. As you can tell, technology is critical to smart city projects.
All Indians Matter.
We have on the show Jaya Dhindaw, Executive Program Director, Sustainable Cities and Director, World Resources Institute, India Ross Center. Jaya is an urban development professional and researcher with more than 2 decades of global experience in sustainable development, urban resilience, and natural resource management. She provides strategic leadership to all urban development and planning and resilience initiatives across WRI India. A systems thinker, Jaya looks at ways to integrate data and science into policy and development initiatives. Jaya, welcome.
Hi, Ashraf. I'm glad to be here.
Jaya, what makes a city smart?
So, Ashraf, I think in my mind, a smart city is one that does more with less. So, a smart city is one that optimally uses its resources, whether they're financial resources, environmental, technological, human, to enhance the quality of life for their residents. So, in the Indian context, where cities are facing immense pressures of urbanization, climate change, infrastructural deficits. So a smart city isn't just one that is leveraging technology to solve all of these problems, but is one that is maximizing efficiency, sustainability, and inclusivity with the least amount of resources and wastage. So, for example, instead of investing in car-centric infrastructure, smart cities would prioritize efficient public transport, non-motorized transport, shared mobility solutions, etc. Also, many Indian cities struggle with gaps in basic urban services like water, sanitation, mobility, housing. And a smart city would be one which can find ways to improve service delivery without excessive capital investment. So, for instance, by using smart water meters to detect leakage or intelligent traffic management systems to reduce congestion without necessarily looking at road expansions. And there are many examples of this in the Indian context, right? The Indore model of solid waste management, shows how behavioral nudges, decentralized waste processing, community participation can make a city cleaner without sort of massive infrastructure overhaul. So these are the kind of cities which are smart.
Actually, that's as good a definition as I've ever heard, Jaya. Thanks for that. Why are smart cities so critical to India?
Not just smart, but India really needs smart, livable, resilient cities, really. So the Indian Smart Cities mission has often been associated with digital solutions. But like I said, true smartness lies in the ability to adapt, innovate, sustain urban growth efficiently and respond to a changing climate and the global shifts and the paradigms which are happening adeptly. So, why are smart cities so critical for India? Because, cities in India need not just tech-driven, but purpose-driven solutions, right? So we need to be able to use data and technology judiciously to solve real-world problems. We need balanced development with resource constraints and environmental responsibility. We need to prioritize the needs of all residents, ensuring equity and access to services. And we really need to focus on resilience, preparing for climate risks with minimal sort of financial and environmental costs. So yes, that is the reason that we need smart cities. We need to maximize impact while minimizing resource consumption and making urban life more livable, sustainable, and inclusive for all.
Now, Jaya, technology has applications across a range of services. So let's talk about a few of them. First of all, can it help curb crime?
If the objective is to curb crime in cities or urban areas, right? Let's say, so there are three ways, right? The first is sort of, the old sort of, and I'll quote Jane Jacobs here. She's a very famous urban planner. And first, the idea that she proposed was the eyes on the street. It was a term coined by her, and it suggested that when streets are lively, they're well lit, populated with, pedestrians, shopkeepers, residents, crime is deterred, right? So creating mixed use, walkable environments and is one way to curb crime. And that's actually a first principle way to curb crime. The second is what is known as crime prevention through environmental design, CEPTED, which basically builds on this philosophy of Jane Jacobs by suggesting the use of urban design elements to curb crime. So things like access control, reduction of dead walls and spaces along streets, plant heights, being mindful about that, transparent storefronts we can look inside. And then comes technology on top of all of that, right? And the technology where it comes in is that it enhances the concept of eyes on the street by expanding, surveillance beyond human presence. So there are tech solutions like, CCTV networks, AI-powered analytics, and, policing, which help monitor high-risk areas in real time, deterring criminal activity. Smart street lighting, public emergency kiosks, all they improve visibility, access to help and all of that. And then there are community-driven apps, like Safety Pin, for example, which is looking at safety audits in cities and personal safety tracking, things of that nature. And then come, integrated command centers, which enable sort of, faster reporting and reduced response time. So additionally, there are also, mapping which happens in terms of data-driven hotspots, which helps, law enforcement deploy their resources more effectively. And so by combining technology with active citizen engagement, cities, yes, can be made more safer and can help reinforce social vigilance, but we need to definitely look at the first principles to start with.
Now, Jaya, when it comes to metros, commuting is arduous, especially in a city like Bombay, and cities like Bombay, Pune, Bangalore are introducing newer modes of transport like the metro. How can technology ease this challenge, especially when we are talking about seriously large commuter numbers?
Yeah, so technology can be a key enabler in easing sort of commute challenges in a few ways, and I'll give you like 3 or 4 examples, right? So the first one would be around multimodal integration, right? So connecting different modes of transport. And that means physical integration, fare integration, and operational integration. So, for example, if you see in Singapore, it integrates sort of their metro, the buses, bike sharing, all on a single digital platform. So if I'm on a train, I'm getting off, I know what next mode is waiting for me or what are my options at least. And so it allows passengers to plan and pay for multimodal journeys seamlessly. Right? The second is single ticketing, right? So basically reducing the friction in payments. If I know I'm going to take 2 modes, I'm going to take a metro, then I'm going to take a bus and then an auto. No, instead of wasting the time and making 3 different types of payments, can we use one? The Oyster card in London is an example of this. So this is a smart card that allows travel across metros, buses, ferries, and even taxis. And India is experimenting with this with the common mobility card system also. I think the third way, because of the crowds, is this whole, managing crowds and passenger flows, in sort of transport systems. And there are ways to do it. Tokyo, for example, uses technology to understand user demand, and then it adjusts the train frequency accordingly. So the trains don't need to be on the rails when they're not needed and the demand isn't very high, or it can be at longer durations. And when there's more crowding, it can be more faster. New York subway platforms sort of screen doors, and they help with crowd management, help regulate passenger flows, and prevent overcrowding and reduce delays. This is very important because, in light of the recent tragedy that happened in the Delhi station and in Mumbai last year at the Bandra terminus, all of these are completely avoidable, and technology can play a great role over there. And then finally, there's an example on, traffic demand management, right? So parking management systems, if I'm going somewhere in a vehicle, I need to know if the parking deck will have space, so I can look that up or book it in advance. It can show occupancy availability. Barcelona, many cities, they kind of do that, right? There's also, smart signaling that can be used to prioritize buses and emergency vehicles. For cities that have things like bus rapid transit systems and dedicated lanes, they're able to use these smart signals very efficiently. So these are the kind of options that exist, and especially when we're talking about large commuter numbers, in Bangalore, these are being tested in various places in India. Bangalore, we are looking at how the bus and the metro can be better aligned and integrate for last mile connectivity. I spoke about the National Common Mobility Card. We are looking at AI-driven predictive scheduling to manage sort of peak hour congestion. And also leverage real-time sort of crowd data to help commuters choose less crowded routes and improve last mile connectivity and things like that. So there are a lot of things which are using technology.
Absolutely. And now healthcare, Jaya, the COVID-19 pandemic underscored how challenging healthcare can be in cities especially, but of course rural areas too, but cities specifically. Is there a role technology can play here?
Absolutely. So, tech can be used and not just healthcare, in most things, right? So we are talking about the ways in which tech can be used is first is problem identification. What is the problem? Who's affected where? Developing baselines. What is the extent of the problem? Modeling scenarios that, under X scenario, what would happen? What is the likely situation under, another simulated scenario? What might happen? It can help with monitoring, and then it can help with feedback, right? So and I'll give you examples of each. So when we're talking about baselines, in cities, we can look at, where are the, for example, urban heat islands or hotspots in the city, where are the informal settlements which have poor green cover and heat absorbent materials in their living spaces, and overlap these to see who is going to be experiencing heat related illnesses, similarly for other climate hazards, right? That's one way. The second one is basically, modeling scenarios. So flood risk, prediction, for example. So flood forecasting to anticipate urban flooding, waterlogging, where that might happen, preventing health emergencies, allocating healthcare resources accordingly is one way in which it can be used. Third is monitoring, so when we're talking about things like dashboards for exposure risks, for air quality, you deploy sensors and you monitor those. When does air quality get better or worse? And being prepared accordingly to send out notifications or whatever that might be. And then, there's also an example of, for example, startups which are using robots to manage and maintain urban water infrastructure and how they have pivoted to wastewater surveillance to detect sort of concentration of pathogens during COVID, right? So there are these kind of technologies also. And then tech is also being used in the form of sort of genetic and epidemiological studies to identify vulnerable populations, allowing cities to prioritize where vaccination should go first and what are the other interventions that can follow. So this basically offers an understanding of problem, who it may affect. So there are several tech-driven solutions that can help with sort of preparedness and to help with sort of better health outcomes for residents in various ways.
I mean, looking, Jaya, at the environmental front, sorry, you briefly touched upon that. And I'm thinking right now about cities like Delhi, where the air is really dangerous to breathe in certain times of the year. What about applications in such places?
No, I mean, in air quality, absolutely. And not just Delhi, right? So air quality is an issue for many parts of the country. So many parts of, today, Bangalore, Mumbai, today, there are many parts of the city which have an AQI above 100 and we don't talk about it. We don't notice it. So the problem is much larger and it's a year-round problem. In Delhi, of course, it gets really magnified a lot and there's a lot of media attention to it, but it's a huge problem. And technology can play, again, a crucial role in aspects of monitoring, air quality, awareness building, the actions taken and enforcement, right? So firstly, I say this that, what can't be measured can't be managed. So we have to sort of expand sort of the sensor-based AQ monitoring and making real-time data publicly available, whether that's via apps or digital billboards, things that we see at traffic lights. These kind of alerts and the awareness that comes with it can help sort of catalyze action at the sort of micro level, individual level, and then community level and many other stakeholder levels. The second is, looking at continuous updates on pollution sources. Where is this pollution coming from? How much? Is it vehicular emissions? Is it waste or stubble burning? Is it industries, construction dust? So this, just this awareness and this continuous sort of knowledge and the inputs and the insights can help bring awareness and behavior change that can help policymakers make more informed decisions. And then there are, of course, when we're talking about AQ, modeling is a big thing, right? So models can help predict pollution spikes, when does that happen? When does it get particularly bad? Where? And then can guide sort of responsive strategies from a governance policy and, innovative solutioning standpoint, if you will, and kind of create these sectoral strategies which can then be deployed. What needs to be tackled? Industries? Do we need to figure out other ways of transport? And invest in public transport, things of that nature. And then finally, tech can also help in enforcement, right? So things like clean energy, emissions control coming from industries, coming from small sort of pollutants, commercial sector, and things like dust control. So I think across the value chain of air quality, from where it is located to enforcement, tech can be really useful.
I think it was very interesting that you said it can actually lead to behavioral change. We'll talk a little bit more about that, Jaya, in a bit. But I also wanted to ask about infrastructure management. And you mentioned briefly the Japanese example where train schedules change based on demand. Can such a thing happen in the Indian context?
No, so absolutely, right? So tech can help optimize the management of any urban infrastructure by using this kind of real-time data or AI algorithms and sensor networks to basically increase efficiency and reduce costs, etc. Right? So, three ways again. Like one is sort of data-driven optimization and efficiency. We held WRI India had conducted a lab called CityFix Labs, and over there we were looking at solutions on waste, water, and energy efficiency. So looking at smart grids, building energy management systems, predictive maintenance, looking at monitoring, Internet of Things, IoT sensors for health of water infrastructure, smart water meters, dashboards of real-time usage, which again can lead to behavior change. And then, looking at integrated transport management solutions in the transport sector, looking at systems on buses, public transport to parking management, smart parking, and then looking at predictive analytics, right? So identifying issues before they arise. So absolutely, when it comes to infrastructure management, there are many ways in which technology can be deployed and used.
So, Jay, I want to also talk a little bit about the human aspect. Now, one of the major problems has been the ability of citizens to engage with the government when it comes to services, of course, but also dialogue. Essentially making citizens feel part of community. Now, I read an interesting line in my research, and I quote, "The electronic medium of communication in the community helps in creating a collective intelligence, which can be deployed for resource optimization," stop quote. How do you go about creating that through technology? Then could you explain what I just read out from my research for our listeners?
Sure. So, I think when it comes to community engagement and dialogue, really, you have to go with tech and initiatives that do three things, right? One is that they build trust and transparency. Second is that they reduce information asymmetry, so the information becomes democratized, accessible to all, and they improve accessibility to things like, basic services. So, things like platforms for service access are really useful. So, streamlining service delivery, whether it's apps for getting permits or, water access, and when is the water tanker coming to my place and things of that nature. Second is real-time communication, where issues are being resolved. So it's not just about incident reporting and me raising the issues, but then knowing that these issues are getting addressed somewhere, they're getting resolved. And there's ongoing sort of updates about it. Things that you'll see in cities, right? Metro or road constructions going on ad infinitum. Is there ways in which I can get updates on when is this going to get over? What stage is it in? So is there a way to involve community there? Disaster preparedness in a big way, right? So not just about disseminating information about, here's a hurricane or there's a cyclone that's coming your way, please evacuate. But even before that, what are the things that you can do for preparedness? Awareness building on heat. Last year we saw so many lives in India lost to heat, so many health issues. A lot of that was highly avoidable by sort of creating the awareness around, what to do on certain types of heat days and who should do what depending on your work profile, where you live, and all of those circumstances. So just that real-time communication. And I would say civic participation is another place, right? So looking at gamification, simulated decision-making where communities can be a part of it, where they feel like they're being heard, so crowdsourcing solutions for problems. They're very popular. Hackathons, urban labs, where people feel like they can engage, they can contribute to the solutioning, I think are really helpful. So by integrating these technologies, cities can create more sort of connected, engaged, and empowered citizenry, and also create a situation where there's, trust and sort of community and community government cohesion. On your point about, the second point about collective intelligence, so I think, yes, the electronic medium within a community does foster shared intelligence, right? And it can help individuals collaborate and make smarter decisions, and help, the providers optimize resource more efficiently. So in our current context, for example, right, we have access to digital platforms, social media, mobile apps, community-driven websites, which allow people to exchange information in real time. For example, residents can report issues like traffic jams, waste not being collected, potholes somewhere, water shortages. This collective sharing of information creates a knowledge base, that the community can then take can then use to take action. And when this collective intelligence is leveraged, it enables the community to make decisions which are sort of more responsive, efficient, sustainable. So, for instance, cities can use this intelligence to track resource usages like electricity and water, common resources, and then use the data to suggest better consumption habits. Like, how can you make your consumption habits better, optimize for these resources, and inform policy. For example, in cities, we just plan for, when we're looking at water, 135, LPCD per day provided to everyone. What if a community uses less or needs less? It helps you understand, that, this is the kind of water resource needed in the community. It helps you understand whether and how to price water. It helps you understand, what is the prospective sort of future of your water resource management in the city. So yes, tech and, this kind of collective intelligence can help turn everyday interactions into a tool for, efficient decision making.
Jaya, we've spoken a lot about the pros, but there's also the argument that technology is hardly a panacea. For example, much has been made of e-governance, but those initiatives have had only a mixed success in India.
No, true. One has to realize that, it is not just about technology, right? There are significant difficulties on the one hand in engaging with the public sector. So when you look at, tendering processes which are prescriptive and innovative solutions struggle to meet those criteria, that's a barrier. The governance structure itself is difficult to navigate and confusing to external stakeholders to engage with. Ensuring timely payments so that these e-governance initiatives can stay alive and operations and maintenance can happen becomes a challenge. So yes, tech is an enabler, but often there are capacity issues. E-governance initiatives that work alongside government as collaborators, right, improving their efficiency in operations or service delivery, you will notice fare better than the ones that, for example, just demand accountability as watchdogs. So there are different types of e-governance solutions, and there are types which do well, and there are types which don't. Also, I think, one word of caution is we should not really look at over-engineering things. I think using technology as and where appropriate, it may not be appropriate everywhere, and just to have that at the back of your mind is very important as we look to deploy certain solutions, especially around e-governance, where it requires, participation and active engagement.
Also, Jaya, what are the challenges in deploying technology on an urban scale in India? Because urban India, the numbers tend to be staggering. The Mumbai metropolitan region, for example, has as many people as all of Australia.
Right. So, like you just said, solving for scale itself is an issue, right? So, and the fact that it's not just scale, it's diversity also, because we're looking at diverse urban environments where the one-size-fits-all approach won't work, right? So, local needs have to be accounted for. There are infra gaps, there's inadequate sort of digital infrastructure. That divide still does exist. So technology deployment at scale is often not possible, or it is limited, right? The second thing is that there are limited capacities when we talk about technical skill gaps, to design, implement, maintain these tech solutions. Tier 2, Tier 3 cities, for instance, would really struggle here. They would lack a pipeline of skilled workforce and talent which can keep up and maintain these kind of solutions. even institutional capacities, and clear agreements on roles in terms of what are the right things to pursue, contracting procedures. All of this becomes a struggle when there's limited capacity. Then there is the issue of maintenance and operations. Like I said, often when we're talking about urban local bodies, they lack the budget and resources to ensure long-term maintenance of tech infra. And that's why, after the first iteration, many of these fall apart, and they just don't see the light of day after that. And that's a big challenge. Then there is the issue of cost and who pays, the affordability of the technology itself. Like I said, it's not necessarily for everyone, and funding and revenue models to sustain the operations of the tech while ensuring access to underserved population is a challenge. We talk about PPP models, public-private partnerships, but those models still remain sort of nascent, contentious. There's a lack of trust, in making that happen. So that's still a challenge. Then finally, there's the data privacy and security issue. So we still lack robust data privacy regulations and enforcement. And then this in turn can create sort of mistrust in tech and lack of public acceptance. So all this to say that there are considerable challenges in deploying tech in a country like India. But at the same time, we have done it with DPI, with digital public infrastructure and payment systems. So with the right policies, partnerships, and local adaptations, it is possible to leverage it at scale, but there are significant barriers that need to be overcome.
So, Jaya, we've spoken a lot about what is currently being used, how technology could be deployed. What new tech and applications do you expect going forward when it comes to smart cities in India? For example, I think it's a no-brainer that AI will be deployed in some way or the other.
Yeah, so this is like a little bit of crystal ball gazing, and that's difficult to predict, right? Because I think 20 years ago, we would have never envisaged something like, Uber or Ola and all of these platforms that exist today. So it's a little bit of crystal ball gazing, but I would say yes. I mean, AI, of course, is going to have a huge impact going forward in, how we plan, design, manage our cities, hopefully for the better. And I think it will be particularly useful in data-driven decision-making and support systems, right? Which will be useful for all the way to, policy makers, decision makers, all the way down to sort of, technical people. So I think a couple of ways in which I cannot predict the exact technology, but a couple of things that on the horizon, which, in some places are also nascent and evolving. One is basically improving the reach and efficiency in urban services. So when we are talking about transport, waste, energy, those smart traffic management systems will evolve. Platforms that offer mobility as solutions are evolving. Waste and energy management, optimization, platforms for circularity. What is one's waste is wealth for another sector, and how that will pan out. So I think some of those things will emerge. Second, to me, very important would be the tackling of climate change. So when we're looking at air quality management, heat and flood mitigation, enabling the financing around that, looking at things like carbon markets and what kind of tech platforms will evolve around that is something to watch out for. The third is what we just talked about. So supporting better governance and citizen engagement. Looking at, and more this is happening in healthcare, but everywhere, looking at personalized services, so customized. For example, transportation route. Today, I'm okay to take a long route to work, but I want it to be scenic. Today, I'm wanting the shortest route, and this is fine. So those kind of things, customized waste management options. I may be willing to do certain things, and and so on and so forth. And I think the last one where it would be really useful would be payments are already underway, but also land management, right? So one is basically better managing payment for services and expanding the net of what we already have. But also, contract management using blockchain for land management, because India is very land constrained, and there's a lot of gaps in terms of efficiency and understanding ownership and things of that nature. And so, using technologies for better land management will be really key. But I think at the end of all of this, it will be really important to ensure that all of these technologies are deployed equitably with strong policies around privacy, accessibility, and inclusivity. So I think we will have to make sure that these follow the do no harm principle first.
So, Jaya, tell us about the WRI Sustainable Cities Initiative as well as the Ross Center.
So the WRI India Sustainable Cities program aims to sort of support urban areas, achieve systemic change and transitions that are good for people, nature, and climate. So in effect, what we're doing is using data-driven and evidence-based approaches to support cities navigate interconnected challenges through sort of transformative initiatives which are on the ground in the realm of policy in their journeys to be low carbon, resilient, and inclusive. So our work is sort of established into three or four practice areas, if you will. One is looking at livable neighborhoods and place-based approaches to creating sustainable cities. So whether that's public spaces, whether that's housing, how do you create these place-based approaches to scaling better, more livable neighborhoods? The second is urban water climate resilience. As the name suggests, we are looking at resource management on the one hand, and on the other hand, we're looking at how do you make cities more resilient through, again, policies, plans like climate action plans, but also on the ground sort of evidence on things like nature-based solutions, hybrid infrastructure. How do you integrate that better? And the third work is more around clean and connected mobility. To be able to lead to economic growth, better integrated growth, and that is a big piece of the work that we do around here. And then finally, we have something that we call crosscuts, which basically feed into each of these practice areas. Those are sort of urban planning, finance, governance, because these are things which impact everything that we do. So that's the work that we do here at the Ross Center.
So, Jaya, here's a question I ask all my guests at the end of the show. Why do you do this work?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, the why, right? So, and I think for me, it comes from a personal sense of responsibility, that I should strive to leave the place better than I found it. So I'm deeply passionate about creating, sustainable communities and ways of living. Also understand that cities is where revolutionary changes are happening in our lifetime, in my lifetime, and will continue to happen. And the decisions that we are making today will shape the lives of the generations to come. So my children, all the children in the world, and me as a producer and a consumer, I have a role in contributing to that change. It could be positive, it could be negative. It's a choice, right? So I feel personally responsible about making the choices that will lead to good outcomes, because I do feel that with every sort of right, freedom, we do have a duty and responsibility to do better.
Jaya, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much, Ashraf.
All Indians matter.